Hello everyone, and welcome to my BJDs for Newbies video series, where I break down the basics of ball jointed dolls and the hobby overall for new collectors. Today I'll be going over the basics about doll eyes. I'll be covering sizes, dome types, what materials doll eyes are generally made in, and more. Doll eyes come in a huge variation of sizes. You can generally find eyes anywhere from 10mm and smaller to 20mm and larger. Those super small and very large eyes can be sometimes hard to come by. There's no particular science to figuring out what eye size you'll want to use in your dolls. It usually comes down to your personal preference, so be prepared to experiment with what you like. To get a base idea of what to start off with though, the best place to look is the individual sale page for your particular doll sculpt. Most companies will usually list an eye size to use, and you can experiment from there. I found that I can usually go either up or down 2mm based off of their listed eye size. If you can't find any information that way though, you can usually ask around the doll community. Not only do doll eyes come in a variety of sizes, but they also come in different shapes. Most eyes you'll find on the market will be in more circular and sphere-like shapes, but there's a handful of places that make oval-shaped eyes as well. Another thing that can differ between eyes is the backing. Some will have flat backs and others will have a stem, which can sometimes make positioning eyes within your doll a bit easier. The next thing you'll want to keep in mind regarding doll eyes is the dome type. The dome is simply referring to the shape of the front of the eyeball. Here you can see the difference between a high dome and a low dome. High domes are able to reflect light better and in turn makes the iris appear more vibrant in color. Another benefit of these eyes is that they track better, which is when a doll's gaze appears to follow you when you look at them from different angles. While unsettling to most people, this can be very useful for doll photography. On the downside, thanks to the higher dome, it can be difficult to position these eyes in anything but a forward gaze, since the odd shape of the dome will push the eye further into the doll, causing unseemly gaps between the eyeball and the doll's eye socket. This is especially true if your doll doesn't have wide and open eyes. For low domes, it's the opposite. They don't reflect light as well and thus can sometimes look a little flat depending on their quality. However, they are much easier to position and give your dolls more varied expressions. Those with doll phobias will also be happy to know that these eyes don't track as well. The main three materials you'll find doll eyes made in are acrylic, glass, and urethane resin. Acrylic eyes are by far the least expensive you'll find on the market, usually costing less than $15. However, unless you're getting higher quality acrylics, these eyes usually don't look too vibrant and they can be pretty easy to damage. Glass eyes are generally in the mid-range price point, and their coloring tends to be much brighter compared to a basic acrylic eye. They're also generally pretty easy to keep clean and are much more resilient than acrylic eyes. Lastly, there's urethane resin eyes, which are usually the most expensive doll eyes you can find on the market, though over the years there's a few sources that have made them much more affordable than they once were. From what I've heard, resin eyes catch and reflect light the best, meaning your doll's eye color will be much more vibrant than even glass eyes. The downside is, though, that since they are made of resin, these eyes are susceptible to yellowing, and they are quite expensive if you want to get a quality pair. There are also silicone eyes, but they're pretty rare to come by. They reflect light very well, but since they're made of silicone, they are dust magnets. Because of that, in my opinion, they're a pretty big waste of money since many people's dolls do tend to sit around and collect dust from time to time. The materials most often used by BJD collectors to install eyes into their dolls are the putty-esque materials shipped with their doll from the doll maker, poster tack, kneadable erasers, and silicone earplugs. From personal experience, I prefer to use poster tack in my dolls. It's got the right amount of tackiness to grip onto the doll itself and its eye, and it's generally pretty easy to pull out of the doll if you're needing to remove their eyes for whatever reason. It's also readily available at most department stores and isn't too expensive. The putty I've gotten from companies has worked alright, but more often than not, they have a funky texture in my opinion, and they also leave behind residue on both my fingers and doll. It also doesn't like coming out of a doll head cleanly. As for kneadable erasers and silicone earplugs, I simply can't recommend them. The erasers aren't tacky enough, and more often than not you're going to be finagling with it for a good while to get it to just stick to your doll properly. It's just not worth all the extra effort when post-or-tack works a lot better. As for the earplugs, the silicone degrades quite a bit over time, and when it's time to remove your doll's eyes, it has a similar consistency to boogers. Not exactly the most pleasant sensation when you're trying to remove your doll's eyes. Also, like the putty, it leaves behind a layer of residue on the doll. And that about covers the basics about doll eyes. If you have any questions, please do leave a comment below and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next video.